When my mother married again, I never expected my life to change so much. One day, it was just the two of us, my mother and me. The next, we were moving into a big house with a man I barely knew and his son. His name was Rashid. I was 18, he was 19. Our parents introduced us like we were long-lost family, but I felt no connection to him. He was quiet, always observing, never speaking much. He was tall, with deep brown eyes that held secrets I couldn't understand. At first, we ignored each other. He stayed in his room, and I stayed in mine. We passed each other in the hallways without a word. But life has a strange way of pulling people together, even when they try to stay apart. One evening, I was in the garden, sitting under the big mango tree. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set. I thought I was alone until I heard footsteps behind me. "You like watching the sunset?" Rashid's voice was deep, calm. I turned and nodded. "It's peaceful." He sat beside me, a comfortable silence stretching between us. "Sunsets remind me that everything ends, even the bad days," he said. I looked at him, surprised by his words. "Do you have bad days?" He smirked, but there was something sad in his eyes. "Everyone does." From that moment, something changed between us. We started talking, little conversations at first, about school, food, and movies. But soon, the conversations became deeper. We spoke about our fears, our dreams, the things we wanted but were too afraid to say out loud. The more we talked, the more I saw a different side of Rashid. He wasn't just my stepbrother. He was someone who understood me in a way no one else did. One evening, I was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by textbooks, trying to make sense of equations that felt like they were written in a foreign language. The silence of the house was comforting, and the only sounds were the occasional scribbles of my pencil and the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was one of those nights when the weight of studying seemed endless, and no matter how hard I tried, the numbers just wouldn't make sense. As I flipped through my notes in frustration, the door to the living room opened quietly. I looked up and saw Rashid standing in the doorway, his figure framed by the dim light from the hallway. He was home early, and I wasn't sure what had brought him back. But when his eyes met mine, he gave a small smile, the kind that made my heart flutter despite myself. "Need help?" he asked, his voice smooth and inviting as he walked over and sat beside me on the couch. The space between us was suddenly smaller than it had ever been. I tried to focus on my notebook, the swirling equations still taunting me. "Math is killing me," I admitted, feeling the frustration building up inside me. He chuckled softly, and I felt the vibrations of his laugh ripple through the air. His presence was overwhelming in the best way. He leaned in, his body closer to mine than it had ever been before, his warmth pressing against me as he started explaining the problems with ease. His words should have made me focus, should have brought me back to the lesson at hand, but they didn't. I wasn't hearing the numbers anymore. My attention was on him. I couldn't help but notice the way he leaned over me, the way his breath brushed against my ear when he spoke. The scent of his cologne filled the space between us, and I found myself getting lost in it. My body seemed to respond to him without my consent, my heart beating a little faster, my breath catching in my throat. I tried to glance back at my notebook, but the ink on the page had begun to blur, my mind fixated on him. At some point, I must have stopped pretending to focus, because when I looked up, I realized I was staring at him. His face was so close, his eyes dark with something I couldn't quite understand. And in that moment, everything around us faded. There was no longer the soft sound of my pencil against the page, no longer the quiet rhythm of the clock ticking in the background. There was only him. My heart pounded in my chest, an overwhelming rush of emotion flooding my body. I should have looked away, embarrassed by the intensity of the moment, but I couldn't. My gaze was fixed on his, drawn to him in a way that I had never felt before. I had never seen him like this, not with that look in his eyes, not with that closeness between us. For a long, breathless second, neither of us moved. There was a shift in the air, something palpable, something that made my skin tingle. It was like the world had stopped turning, and all that existed was the space between us. What had once been a casual interaction between step-siblings had somehow evolved into something else, something forbidden. And for a moment, I wondered if he could feel it too, the electricity in the air, the pull between us that we both seemed to recognize but neither of us could name. Then, as if snapping out of a trance, Rashid shifted back, clearing his throat. The spell was broken, and the moment between us shattered as quickly as it had appeared. "I should go," he said, standing up and moving toward the door. His voice was different now, a little strained, as though he was trying to regain some semblance of control. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. What could I say? The words wouldn't come, and the space between us felt too wide, too filled with things that neither of us were ready to confront. And just like that, the moment was gone. The air between us returned to its usual comfortable distance, but something had shifted. Something had changed. I could still feel the weight of his presence, still hear the echo of his voice in my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things between us would never be the same. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The look in his eyes, the way my heart had raced, the heat that had lingered in the air between us. It was a feeling I couldn't escape, a feeling I didn't want to escape. But I knew that whatever had happened, whatever that moment was, it would remain locked inside me, a secret I couldn't share and a desire I couldn't act on. I started noticing Rashid more, how he ran his fingers through his hair when he was frustrated, how his lips curved when he found something funny, how his deep voice made my stomach flutter. But it wasn't just me. I caught him staring at me too. When we sat at the dinner table, when I walked past him in the hallway, when I laughed at something our mother said. One afternoon, I was baking in the kitchen. The house was empty except for Rashid and me. He walked in, leaning against the counter, watching me. "You bake?" he asked. "Sometimes," I said, trying to focus on the dough in front of me. He moved closer. Too close. "You have flour on your face." Before I could react, he reached out and wiped it away with his thumb. His touch was soft, lingering longer than it should have. I froze. My heart raced. He didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes locked on mine. For a second, I thought he was going to kiss me. But then, he stepped back. I should go. And he left, leaving me breathless and confused. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that it was just a silly crush, that I was imagining things. But the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it became. Then one night, everything changed. It was late. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs to get some water. Rashid was there, sitting in the dimly lit living room. "You can't sleep either?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts." I sat beside him, our shoulders almost touching. For a moment, we just sat there, listening to the quiet of the house. Then, he turned to me. "Aisha." There was something in his voice, something raw, something desperate. Before I could ask what was wrong, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I shivered. "I know this is wrong," he whispered. "But I can't stop thinking about you." I should have said something. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I closed my eyes as he leaned in. His lips brushed against mine, soft, hesitant. A question. A plea. And I answered. I kissed him back. From that night, everything changed between Rashid and me. What had once been a simple bond, the camaraderie of step-siblings, morphed into something else, something unspoken, but undeniable. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and we could no longer pretend that there wasn't an attraction between us. We became careful, vigilant. Every interaction was now a game of secrecy, of stolen moments when no one was watching. A touch of the hand, a lingering glance, a whispered word that only we understood. Each fleeting second made my heart race, each quiet exchange felt like a small rebellion against the world around us. We would find ways to be near each other. The study became a place where we could talk for hours, pretending to focus on books, but in reality, our minds were somewhere else. Our conversations drifted between light-hearted teasing and deeper topics, moments where we shared thoughts and desires we'd never dared to voice before. At times, I would catch him looking at me, his eyes filled with something that made my pulse quicken, something that mirrored the feelings inside me. But secrets, no matter how carefully kept, have a way of creeping into the light. And when they do, they expose everything in ways you can never fully prepare for. One afternoon, I was sitting in the study, pretending to study, when Rashid walked in. I could feel my heart skip a beat as he sat next to me, so close that his knee brushed against mine. I tried to focus on my book, but I could barely read the words. My mind was on him. His presence, his warmth, the way he smelled, the way he made everything seem so much more alive. I was lost in the moment when the door to the study creaked open. Startled, I quickly pulled away, trying to act normal. It was our mother. She had come to check on us, but the look in her eyes, the subtle shift in her expression, told me that something was off. She stood there for a moment, her gaze flicking between the two of us. There was no anger, no immediate accusation, but the suspicion was undeniable. We were sitting too close, our hands had almost touched. The air between us was charged with something unspoken, and I saw her recognize it before either of us had a chance to hide it. She didn't say anything then. She simply turned and walked away, but the weight of her gaze lingered. My stomach twisted with anxiety, a sense of dread filling me. I knew that she had noticed something, and deep down, I feared that she would confront us. That night, as the house fell silent, I could feel the tension in the air. My mother called me into her room, her voice soft but firm. "Aisha," she said as I stepped inside, "sit down." I did as she asked, my heart thudding in my chest, every instinct screaming that this was the moment everything would unravel. "I don't know what's going on between you and Rashid," she began, her voice calm but laced with concern. "But whatever it is, it stops now." I could feel the color drain from my face. "There's nothing," I started, but my words faltered in my throat. I couldn't lie to her. Not now. Not after everything we had shared. She looked at me, her eyes steady and full of a knowing that I couldn't deny. "Don't lie to me, Aisha." Her voice softened, a mother's concern heavy in every word. "I see the way you look at each other. I know love when I see it. But this is not right." My breath caught in my throat, and tears stung the corners of my eyes. I wanted to say something, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I whispered, the weight of guilt pressing down on me. "I hadn't planned any of it. I hadn't asked for these feelings to take root. But they had, and now it was too late." She sighed, sitting down beside me. She reached out and gently cupped my face in her hands, her touch so tender it almost broke me. "I know, sweetheart," she said, her voice quiet with understanding. "But some lines should never be crossed. Some things are sacred, Aisha. And this is one of those things." Her words cut through me like a sharp knife, each one unraveling the delicate web of excuses I had spun in my mind. She was right. What Rashid and I shared, no matter how deep or genuine it felt, was wrong. The guilt washed over me in waves, and my heart felt like it was breaking in two. We weren't just step-siblings, we were family, bound by something that should have never been compromised. "I know," I whispered, my voice breaking. Tears filled my eyes, but I wiped them away, not wanting to show her how deeply I was affected. I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing her any more than I already had. She pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, I allowed myself to break down. I let the tears fall freely, the emotions I had been hiding for so long finally spilling over. But even as I cried, a part of me resisted. A part of me couldn't let go of the bond one had with Rashid, the love that we had tried to bury under layers of denial. "I love him," I murmured, almost inaudible through the sobs. My mother didn't answer right away. She just held me tighter, as though trying to absorb my pain. "I know, Aisha. But love doesn't always make things right. Some loves, no matter how strong, can never be." Her words hit me like a thunderclap, and for the first time, I truly understood the weight of them. I knew she was right. What Rashid and I had was something beautiful, something real, but it was also a love that could never exist in the way we had hoped. And even though my heart ached with the knowledge, I knew I had to let go. That night, I found myself standing at Rashid's door, my heart racing in my chest. The weight of what had to be done pressed down on me, making my limbs feel heavy, as if the air itself had thickened. When he opened the door, his eyes met mine, and without a word, he knew. "Rashid," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "We have to stop." His face remained impassive for a moment, but I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten, the way his eyes darkened with something I couldn't name. He wasn't surprised, he knew this day would come. "So, that's it?" he asked, his voice low and tight with emotion. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear to see the hurt in his eyes, the same hurt I knew was mirrored in my own. But I had no choice. This was the right thing, no matter how much it tore me apart. "What choice do we have?" My words came out as more of a plea than a statement. He sighed deeply, rubbing a hand over his face in frustration. He looked older, somehow. Tired, as if the weight of our secret had drained the life from him. "Aisha, Don't say it," I interrupted, my voice breaking as I fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. "Please, don't say it." His eyes searched mine, as if trying to find a way to make this easier, to find some way for us to hold on to the impossible. But there was no easy way. We couldn't keep doing this. Not with the knowledge that our love had the potential to ruin everything. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could feel his pain, the silent yearning that still flickered in his gaze, the same longing that had once drawn us together. I was scared. Scared of losing him, scared of what life would look like without him in it. But even more than that, I was terrified of continuing down this path, knowing that it would destroy us in the end. He reached out then, his hands trembling slightly as he cupped my face gently, his thumb tracing the contours of my cheek. It was a soft, tender touch, the kind that spoke volumes without saying a word. "In another life, maybe," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The question hung in the air, an unspoken wish, a possibility we could never have. A life where nothing stood in the way of our love, where we weren't bound by the chains of what was right or wrong, where we could be together without guilt or fear. I let out a shaky breath, the tears threatening to spill now, but I held them back, just barely. "Maybe," I whispered back. And then, as if to seal our unspoken goodbye, he leaned in. His lips touched mine, slow and tentative at first, as though he was testing to see if I would pull away. But I didn't. I didn't want to pull away. Not now. Not when everything we had shared, all the emotions we'd built, seemed to be spilling out in that single moment. The kiss was slow, deep, filled with everything we couldn't say, everything we had kept hidden for so long. It was a kiss full of longing, of regret, of love that would never be. It was everything I had ever wanted, and everything I knew I could never have. When he finally pulled away, I felt a part of me break, a part of me that I didn't even know was there. I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to end. But I had no choice. I had to walk away, for both of us. So, with a final, lingering look, I turned and walked away. Each step felt like a weight on my chest, each step pulling me further from him, from the love that could never be. And as I walked away, I realized that some things, no matter how badly you want them, are just never meant to be. Years passed. Rashid and I moved on, as time often demands. Life, in its relentless pace, swept us forward, each of us carrying the weight of our past in different ways. We built our lives, our families, our futures, and somehow, we learned to live without the constant pull of what could have been. But there were moments, fleeting and quiet, when I would find myself alone, often late at night, when the world was asleep and all that remained was the hum of my own thoughts. In those moments, I would think of him. I would think of us. What if things had been different? What if, instead of being bound by the threads of fate and circumstance, we had met as two strangers, free from the expectations, free from the boundaries that had once defined us? What if the world had given us a chance to explore the love we had, without guilt, without fear of what was right or wrong? What if we had been just two people, meeting under different circumstances, without the weight of the past hanging over us? The questions lingered, always unanswered, always slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. There were no answers, only echoes of what could have been. I don't regret loving him. How could I? In the years since, I've come to understand that love doesn't always fit neatly into the boxes we try to place it in. Sometimes, love is messy, complicated, and beautiful, even when it's forbidden. I loved Rashid with a part of myself that I had never known existed, a love that was raw and real, yet untouchable in the world we lived in. And I will always carry that love with me, tucked away in a place where no one can see, where no one can judge. But I also know that some love stories are never meant to be told. Our love story was one of them. It was a story too complicated, too tangled with impossible choices and what ifs. A story that would only cause pain if it were ever to be laid bare. Some love stories, no matter how deeply they are felt, are not meant for the world to see. Ours was one of those stories, and so, we moved on. Rashid and I lived our lives, never speaking of the past, never acknowledging the bond we once shared. We kept it buried, deep within us, knowing that some things are best left untouched. But even now, when the night is quiet and my thoughts drift toward him, I wonder. I wonder if, in another life, things could have been different. And I wonder if, somehow, he's thinking the same thing. But life moves on. We move on. And some stories remain untold, locked away in the hearts of those who lived them, forever unspoken.